Welcome to the presentation for the Action Research Initiative, leveraging the Performance Analysis Quadrants tool during training request intake. In my 25 years of human performance improvement consulting, I've noticed a phenomenon in large and mid-sized businesses. When a performance problem is identified in the field, the manager of that team almost always classifies it as a training problem. In turn, they contact the training team to perform an intake. The intake starts with the solution already being identified by the requesting manager as a training request. The intake manager will then prioritize that project against other projects. They'll set the deadlines and then assign the project to the ID team. By the time the ID team receives a request, it's clearly a demand for training. This is a flawed approach. The first flaw is that the field manager rarely has the human performance improvement skill set needed to classify the root cause of the performance problem. The second flaw is that the intake manager is usually under political pressure to respond to training requests by delivering training. The third flaw is the ID team rarely has the political clout to push back, so they spend much of their resources on solutions that are not going to be solved by the products they're creating. As a result of this flawed approach, approximately 1 out of every 10 performance problems is misdiagnosed. That doesn't sound like much, but let's do the math. Let's take 1 hour of web-based training. That takes 5 weeks for an ID team member to create. If your organization creates 100 hours of training, which is not unusual for even a mid-sized company to create, that means that 10 hours of web-based training has been created unnecessarily. If it takes 5 weeks to create 1 hour of web-based training, it takes 50 weeks to create 10 hours. That's the equivalent of 1 full-time employee. But let's say you have 4,000 employees who take that 10 hours of unnecessary training. That's 40,000 hours of unproductive time. That's the equivalent of 20 full-time employees, or $450,000. And the problem is still not solved. The heart of this problem is root cause and communication. Before we get into the actual inquiry, let's get some background on the Performance Analysis Quadrants tool, or PAQ. The PAQ tool is a simplified view of root cause of performance problems. We start by rating the individual's knowledge of how to perform the job correctly from low to high. Then we rate their desire or their want to perform the job correctly. If we break both of these axes in half, high and low, we end up with 4 quadrants. Selection, we're not recruiting and hiring the right people for the job. Motivation, the people know how to do the job, but for some reason have no desire to do it. Resources or environment, meaning they know how to do the job correctly, they want to do the job correctly, but don't have the tools or systems to perform the job properly. Finally is the training quadrant. Here is the quadrant where they want to perform the job correctly, but don't know how. Only performance problems that are root caused in the training quadrant can be solved by training solutions. Now let's get into the inquiry. The purpose of the inquiry was A, to determine how better communication during intake benefits the project and the project team, and B, determine how the PAQ tool can be leveraged during project intake to improve communication. To achieve this purpose, I broke the inquiry into 3 primary questions. 1. What does the requesting manager need to understand about human performance improvement in order to be successful in the project? 2. How can better communication during project intake benefit the project and benefit the team? And 3, how can the PAQ tool help? The methodology used for the inquiry was broken into 2 major areas. 1 was the literature review, 2 was the practitioner input. The literature review consisted of examining several texts and books on performance improvement and performance consulting. Second, online tools were used, including Google searches and Skyline catalog, to find current thinking and articles on the subject. The practitioner input consisted of distributing a Zoomerang survey to strategic managers whose position it is to perform project intake. Second was a set of LinkedIn group discussions in ID groups, organizational development groups, and human resources groups. After consolidating the data from the literature review and the practitioner input, all of the data was examined for themes and answers to the questions. This led to the following findings. The requesting manager needs to have basic understanding of human performance improvement and root cause. The second finding is not surprising. Better communication improves likelihood of success. Better communication can be defined as shared language and building rapport and trust. Better communication also results in the ID team being able to focus on training solutions. As for the PAC tool, it turns out that that's an excellent tool to build shared language and to discuss the necessary background in human performance improvement concepts that the requesting managers need. All in all, I would say this was a successful inquiry, and we should be looking at how the PAC tool can be leveraged to improve communication in further phases of the project. Thank you for your time.